A federal appeals court has once again found that the CDC eviction moratorium is unlawful. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. Alright, so I have an update for you today, and it's all about the case that was going on for the CDC eviction moratorium. Now, I know that there's already been a case that's went to the Supreme Court, but this is one of the other cases that was currently in the U.S. Appeals Court. But before I get into that article, let me go ahead and ask you to hit that subscribe and like button, maybe leave a comment down below, and I'll work to keep bringing you great articles about the eviction moratorium and other news that's of interest to landlords. So, this article comes from thehill.com, and it says, Federal Appeals Court finds CDC eviction moratorium unlawful. Yeah, I've been saying it for quite a while now. I've never believed that the eviction moratorium from the CDC was lawful. But I'll go beyond that. I've always believed that any eviction moratorium actually is counter to the Constitution. And that's why I wanted these things to be shut down, because there's too many landlords who've been suffering for all this time, and there's nothing that they've been able to do except for sit around and suffer. So let me get into this article and see what it says. A federal appeals court ruled Friday that the Center for Disease Control and Prevention exceeded its authority by temporarily halting evictions amid the pandemic. In a unanimous ruling, a three-judge panel of the Cincinnati-based Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals agreed with a lower court that the agency had overreached with its eviction moratorium, which is set to expire at the end of July. The CDC order, originally enacted in September 2020 and subsequently extended by Congress and President Biden, aims to protect cash-strapped tenants who would face overcrowded conditions if evicted. Well, I've believed that the real reason the CDC eviction moratorium was put into place had less to do with the pandemic and more to do with the financial consequences of the required lockdowns that a lot of states had in place. So a lot of people weren't even allowed to work. A lot of businesses weren't allowed to open, and so a lot of people lost their jobs, and the government was at fault for that. So rather than having those people be evicted, they put this eviction moratorium into place. The problem is, instead of putting the burden on the government to take care of these people who are now facing financial hard times, they put the burden on the landlord. Okay, it's not a private individual or a private business's job to take care of the low income, the unemployed, the homeless, etc. Okay, that is the job of our government, to help provide for those in need. So yeah, putting the landlords over that, suddenly that pushes the financial burden onto us, and that's an awful situation to be placed in, especially for the small mom and pop landlords. But in its Friday ruling, the court rejected the CDC's two-pronged argument that the eviction freeze was within its authority, or that Congress authorized the measure after the fact as part of its COVID-19 relief legislation. It was not immediately clear what practical impact would result from the ruling, which affirmed a March decision by a federal judge in Tennessee in favor of a group of landlords. That lower court ruling by U.S. District Judge Mark Norris, a Trump appointee, blocked enforcement of the eviction freeze throughout the Western District of Tennessee. Yeah, that was a good ruling. Unfortunately, it didn't carry over into the rest of the country, so it only blocked enforcement of the freeze in the Western District of Tennessee. So not even the entire state of Tennessee was covered by that. I mean, this is... that wasn't exactly a decision that would have helped a lot of landlords throughout the country. But, the more cases, the more things that say, hey, this was wrong, the less likely it is to happen in the future. And that's all I want to see. Is I don't want to see the CDC passing anything like this ever again. Okay, so on July 31st, this CDC eviction moratorium is supposed to end, and I hope it does. I hope that they don't try to pull something out of their butts and, keep landlords from getting paid anymore. But we'll see. We got about a week to go. The latest development comes after the Supreme Court last month voted 5-4 to reject an emergency request from a separate group of landlords who also sought to have the eviction ban lifted, arguing it amounts to unlawful government overreach at a cost of some $13 billion each month to property owners. Justice Brett Kavanaugh, who is among the majority, indicated that he believed the CDC had exceeded its authority in enacting the moratorium and said Congress would need to pass new legislation for the CDC to lawfully push the moratorium past July 31st. According to Luke Wake, an attorney at Pacific Legal Foundation, which represents landlords in a number of challenges to the eviction moratorium, the Sixth Circuit's ruling Friday increases the odds that the CDC will simply allow its moratorium to expire at the end of the month, rather than attempt to extend it further or mount an appeal to the Supreme Court. Yeah, I hope that they don't try to extend it. But my other issue is that what if they find other ways to make the eviction moratorium last longer, okay? So let's say that the president, for example, can come out with an executive order, or that some other government agency who probably also doesn't have the authority comes out and says, hey, we're throwing an eviction moratorium out there. Maybe the EPA or the Board of Education would throw an eviction moratorium out there. I mean, we can't allow any of these eviction moratoriums to continue. So they need to just come out, these courts and say, hey, this is an unconstitutional taking of people's property, and it's not right, it's not legal, and it's against the Constitution. I think the real practical significance of this decision today is it puts the CDC in a box. They're trapped right now, Wake said. If they had thought about renewing it, which was entirely likely that they would, now they've got the Sixth Circuit definitively agreeing with us that they didn't have the statutory authority, and that if they did, it was a constitutional problem. The federal moratorium allows tenants who have lost income during the pandemic to protect themselves from eviction by declaring under penalty of perjury that they have made their best effort to pay rent and would face overcrowded conditions if evicted, threatening public health. Well, I haven't heard of a single case yet of a tenant who has been charged with perjury for lying. Okay, and that's not to say that it hasn't happened, because we all know that it's happening, that there are tenants out there right now who are lying and saying that they need these protections when they really don't. But there's not going to be any cases. There's no enforcement of this at all, on that end for the tenants who are lying. And that's another issue that I have with this whole thing. The extended protections come as landlords and property owners have sought to evict tens of thousands of financially distressed renters from their homes, and as federal rental aid continues to make its way to needy tenants. Some state governments, which bear responsibility for distributing more than $45 billion in federally funded rental assistance, have been slow to make those disbursements. The eviction pause has faced numerous legal challenges, leading to a patchwork of legal interpretations nationwide on the moratorium's lawfulness. Yeah, that's why the Supreme Court should have just stepped forward immediately, and they could have ended all of this by just making a definitive decision that this is unlawful, we need to end this now, and all these other cases wouldn't even be existing. But instead, they kind of passed we'll just let it expire. That was a bad thing to do, okay? And I don't agree with Justice Kavanaugh in his decision to do that. So, yeah, it doesn't look like this decision is going to do much to help landlords at this moment. I know that the CDC moratorium is set to end at the end of July, but of course there's still the state moratoriums, and then there's other ways that they could possibly extend this. So this might not be over yet. Hang in there if you're a landlord, okay? Because this battle is continuing, and it's going to be going on probably at least till the end of the year.